Fake news. CNN's Don Lemon. He claims to be a so-called journalist. He's not. I met him in person. He's actually a nice guy. Was nice to me last night. Back in January, in the immediate aftermath of Smollett's hate crime allegations, Lemon rushed to support the Empire actor. Despite obvious red flags, Lemon publicly doled out sympathy to Smollett. In fact, the CNN host told Entertainment Tonight that he texted Smollett every day following the incident. Now that the actual facts are coming in, now Don's trying to spin the story and even blame me, like I'm responsible. I'm apparently running the world and everything else. Take a look.
This is playing out every single moment in cable news. Sean Hannity's going to eat Jussie Smollett's lunch every single second. Tucker Carlson is going to eat Jussie Smollett's lunch every single second.
President of the
President of the United States is going to eat his lunch. And who does the President of the United States watch every night?
You.
Cable news. Yeah, well, cable news.
You know, the interesting part is I purposely stayed away from the story to wait for more facts to come in. My sources in Chicago almost instantly were warning me, be careful on this story. Now, Don, everyone knows you hate Trump. You're part of the hate Trump media. You pretend to be objective. You're not. So why don't you just admit you're a talk show host like me? Be honest with your viewers. Joining us now is America First Action Senior Advisor Sean Spicer, media reporter for The Hill. Joe Concha, good to see you both. You know, Joe, something fascinating you discovered and wrote about. Wow, everybody over at Conspiracy TV, NBC over there, they were all over the story in the beginning. How much coverage was in primetime last night?
In primetime MSNBC, if you're talking about, now remember, the Chicago police announced at 7:53 p.m. that Smollett would be charged. That means the 8 p.m., 9 p.m., 10 p.m., and 11 p.m. shows.
That's called primetime. Yeah.
Primetime, right. Chris Hayes, Rachel Maddow, Lawrence O'Donnell, Brian Williams, who used to be the NBC news anchor. They covered it.
The same Brian Williams that saw dead bodies floating where there was no water?
Maybe why he's now at MSNBC at 11 o'clock instead of NBC at 6:30 at night. But they covered it for 0 minutes. And look, opinion shows I give a lot of leeway to because it's the editorial page. The problem here, the issue for MSNBC here, Sean, is the fact that they covered this story heavily when the narrative fit what they thought their audience wanted to hear. This was custom made for an MSNBC audience as it was presented in the beginning. 2 white males attack a gay black actor with bleach and a noose.
And a MAGA hat.
And a MAGA hat yelling, "This is MAGA country." And despite the fact there are many questionable parts about the story from the very beginning, and I withheld judgment as well, as in what are 2 men walking around Chicago in a polar vortex in 30 below degree weather waiting for a gay actor they probably have never seen on TV before, prepared for that very moment. And then once Smollett wasn't handing over phone records or they're heavily redacted, that's when you knew there was a problem. But MSNBC and NBC and a lot of other news outlets, not Chicago media, they did a great job here. They went ahead and presented it as an attack, as if it were fact, instead of using that key word alleged, and now it's coming back to bite everybody.
You know, Sean, let me put it in context. Besides missing the biggest abuse of power corruption scandal in history and the hate, Trump mob mentality media, going with every story that's anti-Trump, proven wrong, they just move on to the next story, act like it never happened. Look at how often they have been wrong. I had Richard Jewell's attorney on, Lynn Wood, who I've known since 1996. We went back that far, but then it's UVA, then it's Duke Lacrosse, then it's Cambridge Police, then it's Zimmerman Trayvon, then it's Ferguson, then it is Baltimore. It's not vetting Obama. It's not after 8 years telling the real statistics of failure of Obama. It is destroy Trump. It's fascinating how wrong they are, how often they are so wrong.
Well, if you look at the last 2 cases in particular, both the Covington case and now this one in Chicago, both of them, it was a rush to judgment because the narrative fit. This idea that anything that's anti-Trump has got to be something that we jump on and go with. If you look at what Don Lemon said, he attacked you last night. But look at what he said, that Jussie Smollett has lost in the court of public opinion, and it's, quote, it's not his fault. He went on to say, when something happens and it's controversial, everyone is coming for you. And so I knew everyone would be picking apart his story. It's not for me. That's not my concern. That wasn't his concern. This gentleman stoked racial hatred. He spoke homophobic hatred, and he used the resources of the police. I'm all for forgiveness, Sean, but But this individual hasn't even admitted his problem. He hasn't admitted the crime. And Don Lemon's rushing and saying that I'm more concerned about him than the thousands of people who didn't have police resources.
Well, look at we have 24 detectives.
And further, hold on.
Yeah.
But, right, so there's 24 detectives assigned that weren't doing other things for the people of Chicago. But furthermore, this concern that everybody has about fake news and further divide, this is exactly what it was happening. But it was inspired by the left, and now they want to ignore it. That's a problem.
By the way, are you really working for Extra Extra? Congratulations.
I am.
That's actually awesome.
Great.
Good for you. Joe, we'll give
Thank
you a quick 20 seconds. Go ahead. Wrap it up.
I think in the end, Sean, MSNBC didn't cover this last night because they were afraid their audiences would be offended in their safe spaces, as if we don't give them comfort food and tell them what they want to hear, then they're going to go somewhere else. People need to be told what they need to hear instead of what they want to hear, and we're seeing that across a lot of news organizations at this point. Just report the news and don't worry about the feelings of your audiences in these cases.
Larry Logan, who was on with us last night, 90% of the media is left, and they're wrong. To the point where...
And now they're calling her, by the way, now they're calling her a conservative. The second that she didn't go along with the name, they dismissed her.
I have no idea what her politics are. But when you get to the point you're willing to destroy a 16-year-old kid and not even make a phone call to find out if what the 10 seconds you're looking at is true, that's why these companies are going to pay. I know Linwood. He is unrelenting. We'll see. All right, thank you both. All right, waiting video appears to show a conservative punch in the face at the University of California, Berkeley. The alleged victim here will tell his story along with our own Lawrence Jones. Straight ahead. All right, amid the whirlwind of news of political violence in America, lost in the coverage was a very disturbing event at UC Berkeley on Tuesday. Conservative youth organization Turning Point USA's UC Berkeley affiliate, they had a table set up in the college's plaza where members were recruiting students to join. According to multiple eyewitnesses, an unidentified individual confronted the Turning Point table before physically assaulting Hayden Williams, a Leadership Institute field representative who was helping Turning Point. The actual punch was caught on camera, but not what led up to it. Take a look.
I don't give a if you're you want to hit me? I'll shoot you. And then that's not get the
UC Berkeley released a statement addressing the incident, saying, in part, quote, UC Berkeley strongly condemns violence, harassment of any sort for any reason. That sort of behavior is reprehensible. It's intolerable. A message was sent by our police force to the campus community with a picture of the suspect and a request that anyone with information about the incident come forward and report what they know in support of our police department's ongoing investigation. We intend to identify and bring the perpetrators to justice. A photo of the suspect has been released, as you can see on your screen, as a search for him now is ongoing at this hour. Joining us now with reaction, the student at the center of this controversy, Hayden Williams, is with us, Fox News contributor, campus reform editor-in-chief. Our own Lawrence Jones is here. All right, let me. Obviously, there's a lot going on here. Is that black guy, by the way, from this incident?
Yes, it is.
Okay. None of us, you're watching what's happening with Jesse Smollett, correct? A lot of people may doubt your story. What led up to it? And is there any evidence that you have eyewitnesses that will testify that you did nothing to provoke this?
Absolutely. So I'm a field representative, as you said, for the Leadership Institute, and it's my job to help organize and train conservative activists throughout California. And on Tuesday, I was invited to UC Berkeley's campus to help a conservative group, Turning Point, recruit new members. And while I was there, some students took offense to our sign that we had that said, "Hate crime hoaxes hurt real victims." And this person claimed we were promoting violence on campus and proceeded to take his aggression out on us.
How many witnesses do you have? Listen, I'm watching. I train MMA, and that shot was a cheap shot, especially at the end. When did you start filming? At what point in the encounter?
As soon as the gentleman, and I use that term lightly, approached our table and began acting very erratic, I feared for my own safety, so I started to record at that moment.
All right. Now, did you try to diffuse this? Did you try to say, I'm entitled to my view? I guess one of the posters said, this is MAGA country. So I don't know.
Watching the other channels lately, there is at least one thing you've learned about the caravan of Central American migrants currently marching toward our southern border. The whole thing is no big deal. These are nice people, every single one of them, much better people than you are. They have the deep moral authority that comes from living in a third world country, unlike you, Mr. Pampered Suburbanite. They're not invaders. They are future model Americans. There is nothing at all to worry about, we're told. Well, that's been the chorus from politicians and news anchors who think they're politicians for weeks and weeks now. If you have any concern at all about this caravan, you are a bad person. In fact, you, sir, are a racist.
All of this for a group of people, a lot of whom are mothers and children, who pose no imminent threat to the United States.
To call this an invasion, it might be the most pathetic invasion of a country in world history if this were actually an invasion, but of course it's not.
The president sending troops to the border to deal with a caravan that hasn't proven to be violent.
Stop saying they're monsters. They're more mothers than monsters. Don't say it. Why don't any of you say that?
There's the line of the day, more mothers than monsters. Turns out that's not quite right. More brothers than mothers, actually. According to the Border Patrol, the caravan is in fact about 70% single men. Not families, women and children, but overwhelmingly single men. According to Mexico's own ambassador, many in the group are, quote, very violent. That's what he recently told NPR. So to restate, the caravan is in fact heavily male and highly dangerous. When the Mexican ambassador says that to public radio, what you're looking at, obviously, is racism, more right-wingery. Just kidding. What we're actually seeing is relentless dishonesty from the very people who are paid to inform us. There's nothing to worry about, they tell us, like we're children. But they don't really know that. They don't really know anything. They are wholly ignorant and yet utterly self-confident. They are good at moralizing and light on facts. So who exactly is in the caravan? A lot of them probably are what they appear to be, poor people from disorganized countries looking for a better life. It's understandable. But are some of them gang members too? How about drug dealers or human traffickers? Shut up, say the news anchors. Don't ask those questions. But if you really cared about America, you'd want answers to those questions. You would insist on knowing. Would you let your kids sleep at a stranger's house? Probably not. You love your kids. Our leaders ought to feel the same way about us. They don't. Instead, they see their own countrymen as the real threat. In the minds of the people making our country's rules, foreigners are always superior to Americans. Watch Don Lemon explain.
So we have to stop demonizing people and realize the biggest terror threat in this country is white men, most of them radicalized to the right. And we have to start doing something about them. There is no travel ban on them. There is no ban on, they had the Muslim ban. There is no white guy ban. So what do we do about that?
We have to start doing something about them, Don Lemon says. Keep in mind that he's talking about an entire racial group currently living in this country. What exactly does Don Lemon have in mind for, quote, them? Deportation, internment camps, more affirmative action? It would be good to know. Some of us would like to tell our sons what's coming. We contacted CNN today to ask them what they plan to, quote, start doing to this dangerous group of racially defective Americans. They never replied. Maybe Lemon will be more specific about his plans on tonight's show. But without even hearing the details, it's pretty clear where the people on TV stand. They instinctively side with foreign nationals over American citizens every time. If you're wondering why they're far more upset about migrant camps in Mexico than homeless encampments in Orange County, that's why. Just yesterday in the New York Times, a columnist called Michelle Goldberg noted approvingly the Democrats can win elections in Georgia if the bad old people who don't agree with her agenda are displaced by a large group of new people who do. Her piece was entitled, "We Can Replace Them." Imagine writing something like that about your fellow Americans. Imagine running it in your newspaper. They didn't think twice, because that's how they really feel. Peter Kirsanow is a U.S. Civil Rights Commissioner. He joins us tonight. Peter, thank you very much for coming on.
Thanks, Dr.
Have you noticed the disparity in outrage between the way our television moralizers feel about the migrants camped by the side of the road in Mexico and their fellow Americans camped?
This whole idea of freedom of speech and this conversation is very important to me, and I'm glad to have you on to talk about it. So what started out as a neo-Nazi murder in Charlottesville and the president's failure to denounce Nazi and white supremacists exploded into a discussion in this country about the removal of Confederate statues. Have we gotten away from the point of what happened in Charlottesville, what it was really about?
And it seems to me we clearly have, and I think that was the point of the alt-right and the white supremacists seizing on an issue that they know that there's actually broad public consensus on not moving a lot of these statues. There's a Quinnipiac poll that came out today showing that 50 to 39 Americans aren't big on the idea of moving all these statues out. So they seized on an issue that they think is a winning issue for them and then tried to broaden out their appeal that way. And I think a lot of folks on the left fell for it. They want to have this discussion anyway, and so they saw the opportunity to have this discussion. But it seems like a misdirection from what actually happened in Charlottesville. The issue in Charlottesville is white supremacy, not whether some people think that statues should come down or stay up, because clearly 50% of the American population doesn't want to keep these statues up just because they're a bunch of white supremacist racists.
Did liberals get played by President Trump?
I think pretty clearly they definitely fell for what was, whether he plans it or not, a trap for the left. I mean, he said, you guys don't have a limiting principle. You're going to go after statues of George Washington or Christopher Columbus or Thomas Jefferson. And now you're seeing that actually happen on the left. The most obvious stupid case is this banning of this reporter from ESPN named Robert Lee, an Asian guy, from covering an event at University of Virginia. You know, the political correctness of the left is actually driving people into Trump's arms, even though Trump's initial response to Charlottesville and then his Tuesday response to Charlottesville was entirely wrong. I think that one thing that Trump has had, he's just benefited from the fact that the left is constantly reacting to everything he says with an enormous level of passion, and I think that that's actually a negative. Even what he did last night insofar as going after the media, because the media reacted, instead of doing objective analysis of where he was not telling the truth, they jumped to, extraordinary critiques of his mental health and talking about how he was crazy and how he was morally bereft and all this stuff. All that does is it plays to his crowd. His crowd thinks that the media is out to get him. His crowd thinks that the media have a particular emotional animus for him personally. And so anything that the media do is going to exacerbate that.
Well, two things. And by the way, just because ESPN, I want to get it correct. ESPN has responded, and they were saying they didn't ban the guy's name is Robert Lee.
They moved him off of it.
They didn't ban him. They asked him if he wanted to, and he picked something that was closer to his family. They said that they didn't ban him, and they were looking out for his own interest.
They're trying to take away our culture. They're trying to take away our history. And our weak leaders, they do it overnight.
The media is simply responding to people who are there protesting and to the story of the statues being taken down. The media hasn't called for the statues to be taken down. So I don't understand when he says the media is trying to take away your culture. What is...
Well, I mean, I do think that one of the conservative critiques of the media, and this has been true for as long as I've been alive and probably before that, is that the media have an agenda, a political agenda, and they hide behind this patina of objectivity in order to press forward this political agenda. Don, you were very passionate about President Trump's statements about the media last night, and I think some of that was justified, but I think a lot of it actually goes to what his base thinks, which is they think that you have an animus particularly for President Trump, that you have an animus for his agenda on things like Confederate statues. I think you personally probably want to see these Confederate statues come down. I mean, would you, don't you, is that true? I mean, I would assume you do.
Listen, I lived in the South for a long time, and to tell you the truth, I knew the statues were there. I was offended by the statues. Whether they should come down, I would leave it up to the individuals. But I do think that they are insulting to people, just as you would you want to see a statue of Hitler as a Jewish
No, I totally
person,
understand
right?
your point of view. The
would
point
you want
is
to
that
go
you have
to,
a point
which
of view,
I made
right?
earlier, would you want to go to, and listen, we shouldn't pretend that there's this fake objectivity. Everyone has a point of view. It doesn't mean that you're biased. And so, but just to get people to understand, as a Jewish person, you would not want to go to a Hitler high school. Well, that same effect, African Americans, that has the same effect. Robert E. Lee has the same effect on African Americans. And also the Confederate flag. And so I think we have to be understanding of each other. It's not that I don't like the president or I have an agenda against the president. I'm simply speaking the truth as I see it.
Okay, so and I totally understand that, but what he's saying and what his people are hearing is he's saying essentially that you do have an agenda in terms of what you think, promulgating what you think about Confederate statues. You have a clear point of view on that. That's a perfectly acceptable and I think understandable point of view, but the implication is that you are an objective reporter who's actually propagating a point of view, whatever that point of view may be. I mean, you just said openly that you don't think that your point of view is biased, but your point of view clearly is biased.
But
I mean,
what I said about the president last night coming out of his speech had nothing to do with statues. I was talking about his behavior on stage, so that had nothing to do with that. Yeah.
Again, totally understood, but the way that it read is that you have a personal animus toward the president, and that's the way he wants to play it. So whether that's true or not, that's the way that a lot of his followers are going to take it.
I only have a personal animus towards ignorance when people don't know their history, whether that's the President of the United States, a guest on this show, or someone I speak to on the street. I think if you're going to be able to, you need to be able to defend yourself. And in order to defend yourself, and in order to have a right, clear perspective, you need to know history and you need to be educated about it. And in many ways, I think people who are fighting for these issues are not. And that means the people who want to take the statues down and some of them who do not want